SEPTA said it will now allow riders without masks on public buses. The Transit Authority in Philadelphia is now changing its policy for commuters wearing masks after social video emerged of a rider being dragged off a public bus by police on Friday. The Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, or SEPTA, issued a policy earlier this week saying all riders must wear facial coverings as of Thursday in order to help prevent the spread of the novel coronavirus. In the video, the man, who is not wearing a mask or face covering, is seen being physically carried off the bus by at least 4 Philadelphia Police Department officers, with half a dozen or more officers outside the bus looking on. The policy, issued April 7, read, SEPTA is now asking all riders to wear masks or other facial coverings, consistent with new CDC guidelines, to protect both riders and operators. The man in the video has not been identified. He is seen repeatedly cursing at the officers as he is dragged off the public bus. He was not arrested or cited for the incident. A SEPTA bus driver requested that an unruly passenger leave the bus several times, and the passenger repeatedly refused, the Philadelphia Police Department said in a statement. PPD officers arrived on location, and after being made aware of the driver's request, also ordered the male to leave the bus several times. The male again refused, at which point he was physically removed by the officers. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention issued the guidelines last week. The incident, which sparked outrage online, led SEPTA to issue a statement on Saturday saying it will no longer make face coverings mandatory on public transit, though it still asks commuters to comply with the recommendation. SEPTA's main concern is the health and safety of our customers and employees, it said in a statement. To that end, on April 9, SEPTA started requiring customers to wear facial coverings to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. That policy will no longer be enforced. SEPTA added, while SEPTA urges riders to cover their faces, those who refuse will not be barred entry to the system. The Philadelphia Police Department and SEPTA said the incident remains under investigation. In Divergent Easter celebrations, prayers for virus victims. Christians around the world celebrated an Easter Sunday upended by the coronavirus without the usual crowded church masses and large family gatherings. Christians around the world celebrated an Easter Sunday upended by the coronavirus without the usual crowded church masses and large family gatherings. Instead, they turned to the internet, television and radio from home to follow services that noted the grave impact of the pandemic. Some found novel ways to mark the holy day. Others still assembled in groups, but took precautions to try to avoid infection. The virus forced a change in Easter traditions that had even endured wars. Christians in the U.S. contended with a patchwork of limits on how and where they could gather to mark Jesus' resurrection. Many states exempted houses of worship from orders curbing communal meetings to help stop the coronavirus from spreading. A few pastors said they would stay open to visitors despite pandemic-fighting guidelines. But no matter how divergent the celebrations, the message from church leaders around the world remained consistent: prayers for the sick and dead and reassurances of God's presence. Here's a sample of Easter events from the U.S. and abroad. Parishioners from churches across New York City sang "Christ the Lord is Risen" today from their balconies and windows as part of an initiative organized online. My husband and I went out on the balcony and we belted it out as loud as we could, said Kathy Keller, of Redeemer Presbyterian Church, who helped launch the Easter 2020 singing event. Keller said people from across the U.S. sent her messages telling her they had joined the event, including a woman in Denver, Colorado who sang while snow fell outside her window. Even if you didn't hear everyone, God heard everyone, Keller said. By Luis Andres Haino. In the central German city of Hildesheim, around 400 people participated in a drive-in Catholic Mass for Easter Sunday. People were allowed to take part if they stayed in their cars with the doors and windows closed, listening to the sermon over the radio. Relevant Church in the U.S. state of South Carolina also held a drive-in service. but took the additional step of changing it to Saturday because of an expected storm. Gloved volunteers carefully distributed pre-packaged communion packets to families who drove into the YMCA parking lot. While Pastor Matt McGarity preached from the New Testament, cars sporadically honked in agreement. We felt tonight like we would any Easter morning, joyful, expectant, hopeful, parishioner Kelly Hills said. By Gare Malson and Sarah Blake Morgan. At one of the biggest churches in South Korea, Seoul's Yoido Full Gospel Church, a small number of masked church followers attended the service broadcast online via the church's website. They were seated noticeably apart from each other to abide by social distancing rules. Choir members also wore masks when they sang hymns. People also gathered at Happy Gospel Church in the U.S. state of Florida, though they were in the parking lot. Some sat in lawn chairs or on tailgates, but families stayed at least 6 feet apart, even when Pastor Bill Bailey did an altar call. By Hyung Jin Kim and Terry Spencer. At the Vatican, St. Peter's Square was empty of crowds and ringed by police barricades. Pope Francis celebrated Easter Mass inside the largely vacant basilica, calling for solidarity the world over to confront the epical challenge posed by the coronavirus pandemic. He offered special prayers for the sick, the dead, the elderly, refugees and the poor and assured the faithful that God was still among them. We are convinced that He has laid His hand upon us, firmly reassuring us, "Do not be afraid, I have risen, and I am with you still." The message was echoed by David Uff, senior pastor at First Baptist Orlando in the U.S. state of Florida. Uff told worshippers tuning into an online Easter service that a question that comes up as the coronavirus pandemic ravages lives is, where is God? He's the same place He was the day His Son died to give us salvation from our sin, he said. He's the same place He was the day His Son Jesus walked out of the grave. He is with us. By Nicole Winfield and Mary Ann Tham. In the U.S. Central Louisiana, Pastor Reverend Tony Spell said people from every state and every continent save one attended Easter service Sunday morning at Life Tabernacle Church.